Welcome to Silicon Valley Impact, where business insight meets startup innovation. And now, please give a warm welcome for your host, Brian Sparks!
Bring it! Let that audience get into it. Welcome to Silicon Valley Impact. I'm your host, Brian Sparks.
Hey, yo.
They're loving you today.
Wow, a lot of energy in the room today. A lot of energy.
The purpose of the show is to have honest conversations about what it takes to build great businesses and communities so that you can make an impact within your own. Yes.
There we go.
Yeah. Hans, good to see you, buddy. Back on the show, third time.
Yeah, man. Good to see you too, Brian. Thanks for having me.
I love the energy you bring. I mean, we have a lot of people come through here who are high energy. Brian constantly. I mean, that intro, right?
Hey.
You can't beat that.
He's got the real radio voice, but he's also got the looks too for movies. I don't know.
I've got a face for radio and a voice for movies. Isn't that how the expression goes?
I know yeah. Brian kicks off the show. It's all downhill from there. But no. But yeah, we have a lot of guests who come through here. A lot of energy, a lot of intelligence, a lot of great personality, and at the top of that list is you, buddy.
Hey, man. That means a lot to me. Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Love that you're back here, coming in from San Francisco. That's like a day's travel.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Since I was on here last, I was in London for a little bit, saw some family, but what you just mentioned right there, I appreciate that, man. I always obviously love coming out here. And
so our audience is growing. We're now over in, talk about other countries. We're in over 20 countries right now.
There we go.
A lot of new faces and ears listening. So before we get into it, because we're just going to start geeking out, I definitely want to introduce, we'll come back and do your intro again, Hans, but Carl, man, thanks for being here, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me. We could have shared that commute, actually. I just realized. Got to save some trees next time.
Right. What we all learn later, right? All right, but Carl, you definitely got the voice for radio too, and I definitely want people to...
And the face.
You're a double threat.
You're a double threat, yeah, and the dance moves as well, but... you have history with the radio, but before we get into it, we just start geeking out and going off off into the weeds here. I want to do our intro. You all know, and for those of you all listening, I don't do intros because I think people do their best. So, Carl, I'll let you do a little intro for our audience who don't know you. They're going to get to know you, but give them a little take on who you are.
Yeah, sounds good. Carl Hinrichsen. I am taking those business insights and bringing them towards startup impact. 15 years of
shameless plug.
building businesses inside of larger corporates, but for the most part, entirely new things that hadn't been done before, such as building Meta's global reseller program, bringing that to 40 countries, starting back in the day when it was still called Facebook. I was among the landing team at Amazon as well, brought the Kindle and Kindle accessories business into Europe, and yet before that, helped people understand why they should use the internet on their mobile phone at Major Bertelsmann. And as of 1.5 years ago, I'm basically taking that and trying to make it accessible and shortening companies' learning curves as an advisor, as a venture scout, and as a founder of this little fractional boutique consulting setup that I'm calling Exec Functions.
I love it. And you have a big history in building businesses, scaling businesses in places like Facebook and Amazon. And so what you're doing now, and if we could kind of create a title today, we're really talking about acceleration, because you have product acceleration, business acceleration, not only in the US, but global. And I think you and I, when we were at CES, we talked a lot about that. And that's when I was just like, oh, I got to have you on the show. I love talking about go-to-market. Hans, you and I have talked about go-to-market a lot. And so we're going to really focus on acceleration today. What does it look for a startup? What does it look like for a startup to really get traction? And whether it is in the early stages or later stages, I think we're going to dive into that. But Hans, give a little intro, because I know we got new listeners. Yeah. We definitely want to introduce you to them.
Yeah, so Hans Sandhu, Chief Business Officer of a company called TheAgentic, or the world's first conversational reasoning LLM. My background more or less has been business strategy, line of business for early stage venture-backed organizations. I did start my career at a public company. So, don't have the FANG experience, but, been in AI and ML and infrastructure infrastructure my entire career. Translated that success to being an advisor, to doing some investing as well, and then I'm also an LP of a VC fund.
And a good head of hair.
Hey, dude. Hey, I got this thing where we say like, hey, we have this MVP Launchpad program, and we have these cancellation for convenience terms, and literally one of the terms that we always say, you don't like Hans's haircut, you can cancel. So I'm glad you brought it up.
I love it. Go with it.
Oh, Hans just rattled through his bio there at such a clip that anybody who doesn't know every little bit of lingo, just so you know, has no idea what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So or what your title is, or where you work, or what what they do. You want to break it down just a little bit for those of us that are not as well
streamlined.
versed.
Silicon Valley is a second language.
So I guess, so I'm chief business officer, one of the business leaders of a company called TheAgentic. TheAgentic is a conversational reasoning LLM. We also have some open source products that allow you to build what we constitute as digital workers. If you've ever heard of a company like Devon AI, imagine something like that that's hyper verticalized, that actually works in production. We enable organizations to go build these types of things.
And your
that made more sense. Thank you.
Yeah, and your sweet spot, again, much like Carl, is scaling businesses.
Yeah. So more or less, I've been a line of business strategy individual for early stage venture backed companies for over a decade. I've got a couple of revenue-facing records at multiple companies. And more or less, what I saw continuously across the space was a lot of recognition of patterns, right? The earlier you go, without getting into the investing side of things, everyone's going earlier. But if you can start to identify patterns within your business, if you can start to formulate, structure from a business standpoint, especially in technical products, that can make all the difference in terms of execution in my mind. So that's what I
and the reason why, just a little more, the reason why we've had you back is your wealth of knowledge in the space that you're talking about. And I love that Brian asked that question about, hey, say that again, because again, you have like this high level of insight and conscious competence. And I don't think people often ask what Brian asks, like, hey, tell me that again, because again, you're,
I appreciate it.
Yeah. I love you. So this being your third time here, I want you to let it rip and let us get deeper insights into what you've experienced, because again, huge experience in that space. But got a lot of ground to cover. Carl, let's start with you. So you are now in this space with all your experience in these FANG corporations and building. Where did you see, and building now your own company in terms of consultation and also scouting, you're looking at these startups. So if you're a startup out there, you're going to want to lean into this. Carl, what did you see that was really a need for startups to get a hold of your insight and your experience to scale their business? That was kind of a lot, but you can break it down and begin wherever you want.
No, I think I see where you're going with that one. So I think the fact is, nobody has all the answers, but somebody somewhere out there for sure does. Most problems have already been solved, right? It's just making that knowledge discoverable. And I saw that when I was in the Facebook's advertising business, and just seeing how different advertisers were approaching their marketing. And if they had just all sort of compared notes more frequently, they would have all been 5 times, 10 times as successful as they individually were. So even, that inspired the sales thinking at that time, where it's not so much about pushing a product on someone, but helping somebody solve a problem. And being a good consultant is more important than being a hard seller. It's definitely an insight that I saw there. And then taking this global partner business that and a phenomenal team at Meta that I got to hire, then build, it was very similar. In one market, they had something super phenomenal figured out that another market hadn't yet. Not every market had the same problems, right? Like some markets had like just local infrastructure challenges that were pretty unique, or the local laws, right? Like the pandemic kicked in halfway through us building that business, and Bangladesh required people to get together in person to sign contracts, but also as a curfew, no one could leave the house. So then seeing our partners innovate around how would you even do that? But essentially there's this constant innovation happening, and shortening the path to those insights and shortening the learning curves really was something that I felt very, very driven and motivated to go by.
Let me put some of that in buckets, because I think it's stepping into the problem that we're going to be discussing today, solving a particular problem for startups, is right where you began. It's perfect. So a lot of problems that startups have is they have an idea. They want to bring that idea to market. In order to do that effectively, they need resources, they need insight. And so both of you have a lot of experience in that. So maybe if we can break that down incrementally, what that would look like. Number one, identifying the resources that are surrounding people is huge. You talked a little bit about marketing being important as well. I understand that there's a lot of technical founders that they may have some blind spots to the importance to that. So let's begin here. And Hans, help me kick this around here.
Yeah.
When we're talking about go-to-market, finding the resources necessary and what to do first, where do we begin when it comes to a go-to-market strategy and assessing the resources that we have?
Yeah, so I would say to maybe put two sides of it. Where is the founder? Are they like a later stage operator? Are they somebody who's just come out of school? I kind of call it the YC or non-YC model, right? Is it a moonshot or not a moonshot? I think that's a good place to start and identify, because more or less it's quickly identifying, in my mind, what's translatable business value, and how can you get to that quickly, right? And the path to doing that definitely changes based on your own experience, based on your own industry, based on whatever the organization spaces they're in.
But wait a minute, Hans. Most startup founders think they're a moonshot right from the beginning. How do you kind of say, well, wait a minute, no, we're gonna and
is that really true? Honestly, do most startup founders think they're a moonshot?
I don't think so. I think so.
Completely convinced that they've got an idea that's going to change the world.
I think they do.
I think you can have that intrinsic thought, right, or whatever it may be, but at the same time, there's a lot of, especially now, right, there's a lot of translatable business value associated to, a particular use case in a particular industry. Sometimes that use case is worth a lot more, right, than other industries if you compare it, right? But from a workflow or infrastructure perspective, might be the same type of thing. You could kind of think of it as like scaffolding in a building, right? Who's actually in the building? How's the building architected? But more or less, the building's a building, right? What's it worth to that industry, that space, that use case? I think that's really important to understand. But to answer kind of Brian's question, I think that there's a lot of entrepreneurs, founders out there that, again, understand that translatable business value, and they're thinking to themselves, okay, I don't need to have a unicorn $100 billion organization. I don't want that. Maybe I want to have a $20 million organization. Maybe they're thinking with exit. I think that's also a good point, because a lot of founders, a lot of early stage individuals, right? They're thinking about companies. What's their end goal with it? A lot of them are saying, oh, take it public. When I hear that from a company, I say, okay, that's great, but that's not more or less where I'm focused.
So to go back to the beginning and tie this in, what I'm thinking right now from what Carl was saying, what you were saying, Hans, is reality gives strategy a solid foundation.
That's a good way to think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then when you have a reality check and you're starting to think strategy, you start to bring in resources. So if we're taking that framework and now assessing, am I a moonshot? This is kind of like, there needs to be a different timeline. Like, what do we start to think about first?
I think that's actually where it gets dangerous, right? Because you could very well imagine or see a situation where there's a set of founders that have a spectacular product on their hands that works really well, and they are so convincing in terms of their passion for the product and how well it actually works and how big the market is, that they get the funding in, and then the assumption is things will take care of themselves. We're going to use the funding to get a bunch of go-to-market people, salespeople, marketing people, and they will do what salespeople, marketing people do. And the disconnect here, without being too on the nose about it, but if you as a founder haven't forced yourself to articulate very well what is special about your product and why people should go and adopt it at scale beyond maybe the first couple folks that were queuing up anyway because it hit an obvious need for them, right? Like, how do you teach others to talk about your product? You got to be really, really focused in your message and really,
when
really
you said
simplified.
at scale, again, I love how Brian kind of set the table for us today. I want to be mindful of like what words mean. Like, so a founder first time, when you're going for at scale, like what do you mean by that? Like, because I can't tell you how many times I've seen a TAM SAM SOM model and it's all over the place, and that's not really, your market. That's just like 3 circles and numbers.
Just being able to teach or to tell your first salesperson how to talk about your product, how to go out there and sell it to somebody who hasn't heard about it before. Once you get that right, you're very far down that journey, and it's harder than you would imagine.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. Also, too, just the patterns within that business, right? I think that identifying very quickly what translates towards value, what is somebody willing to pay for, right? And then I think that you paid attention towards something that I talk about continuously with people in venture and early stage startups, which is the fact that when people get funding, they think that they've won already. And again, I think that comes with experience, right? I truly believe that right now that you can bootstrap your way towards, a couple $1 million. You really can. But again, it comes down to what you're spending your time on, being diligent about it, and being serious too, as well, right? There's a ton of technology, if we're talking about that, for an example, tons of technology companies that get into POCs that think POCs are great, right? They are great if they actually have translatable revenue at the end of it, right? Or an idea or an understanding where you align on, okay, what's the associated criteria? With a lot of new technology right there, the criteria is all over the place, decision-making process is all over the place, and especially when you've got a founder that doesn't have that experience, you waste your time.
So again, this is amazing. That's why I had you both here. This is great. I think in the first 10 minutes, I got whiplash of insight. I mean, we just really got into it really quickly. Love it. For those of you listening, go back and listen to this first 10 minutes, ton of information. But let's put this in 2 buckets now, because you two are saying something that's very distinct with the listeners who may be out there. There's a strategy pre-funding, you're bootstrapping, what you bring to the table. Then there's post-funding. You've been funded, and the strategy there. In order to have that effective strategy right from the beginning, because I really believe momentum and those first critical moments set the course. Let's start with somebody who is bootstrapping, someone who doesn't quite have the funding yet, but needs to start showing those use case scenarios. What are some early stage go-to-market strategies that these pre-investment dollars can start to look towards?
Yeah. I'll take it simply. I think that people educating themselves, and there's so many resources now, educating yourselves on like just sales fundamentals, right? More or less what I would focus on is forecasting. Don't get too caught in the weeds with that, but have a basic understanding of how forecasting works, time in terms of it takes, what the longest stages are. Again, you can get very nerdy really quickly with this stuff. But the more you understand and identifying how your business is operating and the gaps between that's gold sometimes to understand and actually get that to an investor. I'll take that all day, right? You see forecasts all the time where people are like, oh, I've got all this in deals, right? In opportunities. I'm like, how old are these, right? Like, where are they? What stages are they in? Like, these are basic questions that somebody should ask. And if they come to the table with that pre-funding, right? Or as they're bootstrapping, again, it's foundationally how they're articulating their business is super important.
Yeah, for sure. And keeping that all very, very connected to what need is a problem, as a product actually solving for a customer out there, right? It's very easy to get sort of mired in, oh, now I have a sales planning tool, I have a CRM, I am hitting pipeline metrics, which the founder at some point defined, or which some business planner at some point defined, because they had 2 hours to set up the CRM and it was the next best thing that came to their mind. And now the first 10 salespeople have already all started just solving for those metrics rather than solving for customer impact. And what would really need to happen is for them to lean into, hey, who are all the prospects that haven't yet, taken the next step, that are stuck somewhere in the funnel, that aren't sure because you're not getting the message across to them. That is information for anyone in sales and go-to-market on how to constantly hone their message. And it's also often important information back to the product team on where is there still friction that needs to be resolved. And you got to make sure that you keep that very, very closely aligned before you can even think about future growth stages like growing through partners or going international.
That's so good. Okay, so you just got it prior to kind of like my last little segment. You had made a comment about the importance of communicating that, and you just communicated that very well. And I want you and Hans to kind of give me an example, because Hans, you two are playing together really well in terms of this strategy. How would it sound as an example for a founder to communicate this? So they have a target market, they have a funnel, they have a use case. In 10 seconds, what would it sound like? Can you think of an example off the top of your head? Because I think what you just shared was excellent bones to what founders need to do and communicate.
I think it's as simple as asking the questions, why my solution, why now, right? I think that if you can answer those two, and also the positioning of what you're trying to do, but those two portions, right? Like an enterprise strategic sales, like sometimes that takes forever to even answer, right? Depending on who you're asking. So again, identify business 101 in my mind, and I've said it on the show before, understand who you're talking to, right? The value in which you're talking to them and can change based on where they are in the, in an organization, but also with what you're selling to and what your approach is, right? Is it a top down, bottom up approach?
When you say that, what is that? What do you mean by top down, bottom?
So meaning, like, are you working with individuals who might be, let's say from the example of technology, right? So bottom down approach, maybe you're working with developers, maybe you're working with individuals who might not have managerial types of roles or anything like that. Mid would maybe be a director, VP, or are you selling from the top down, meaning are you selling vision? Are you selling whatever it may be, right? But there's different approaches for different types of technologies. You can take a simultaneous approach, proactive approach, and all of that. But again, it's identifying quickly, okay, who is this person? What do I believe that they care about? What's my thesis towards this, right? But again, asking those simple questions like, okay, why do they even want my solution, right? Or why are they even thinking about that? Is that personal? Is it business use case related? Like, there's a lot of things to answer to that. And then also, why now, right?
Yeah.
Is there forms of the business that are pushing on it? Does it have to do with something else? Like, there's so many things just to answer within those 2 points.
Yeah, I have an example that I can throw in there as well. So one of the clients that I'm working with is an AI-powered language tutor. And there's a whole lot of complexity that I'll sort of save for a later question or occasion around taking that business international. But at its foundation, there are different reasons for why people, especially in a B2B world, want to get a language learning, a language tutoring app into their business. And the fact that that is not always obvious has really, like unlocking that or understanding that helped unlock things in the sales cycle there. Some clients were buying the solution, were interested in the solution as a corporate benefit, as something that they would give an employee. Here's a language learning solution along with your insurance thing, along with your retirement planning, along with maybe somebody who walks your dog. And those businesses were looking at this sort of sales process very, very differently than those who were buying the solution to enable their team members to work with international clients tomorrow, right? For those, it was a business need, it was a career progression opportunity for those employees, and there was much more immediacy. So they needed a whole different kind of outreach, and they needed a whole different set of sales narrative versus the one for whom it was a corporate benefit. And understanding that a good part of those in the pipeline were actually being approached wrong really then made a difference in training those sales folks, training those partners differently.
I want to double click on that
point.
because, yeah, exactly. That's a great point. Where do founders or the CEO go wrong in failing to shift perspectives? I mean, you can start getting traction close to home, but yet what you're saying is you get further away from home, you need to have different insights.
and these things can happen very organically or by accident almost when you have just solved for metrics, like we were saying earlier, right? Like if it's a case, we got to close X many sales by X date, everyone brings in anyone who even seems like remotely interested in the product and isn't, hasn't jumped out of the way quickly. And you can, I think, resolve that and unravel that by bringing it back to the basics and saying, what are we setting out to accomplish with our product? What kinds of jobs to be done have our clients? What kind of problems are we solving to them? And then we focus on the ones that we are most well positioned to help solve something fast, and everything else we figure out next quarter, essentially.
So that's a good place to bring this kind of full circle. The original question was, let's start with startups that don't have funding. This sounds like a startup that would have funding because they're clearly growing. Hans, anything to add to this? Because you started with the startups that don't have funding.
Both, yeah.
Yeah, build on the perspective of scaling globally or even keeping up with projections. Because you can have a spike, you can have early adopters, but then it flatlines or marketing runs out or whatever it may be. How do we keep this momentum going in terms of, I guess, market sustainability?
I think that's something I learned pretty early in my career. I had the awesome, amazing opportunity to be some amazing salespeople. And I think that the old school mentality of pipeline cures all definitely still holds true. Close one revenue cures all, obviously, but I very much truly believe in kind of the fanatical prospecting, aspect of it. Jeb Blunt, he's an amazing guy. Check him out. He writes a bunch of books. But more or less, he says what you do today will be seen from a prospecting perspective and pipe gen in 90 days from now. So a whole quarter, right? So meaning that even if you think you're closing deals and doing that type of stuff, right, cool. But you need to spend time like on working accounts, and especially when or working leads, whatever it may be, there's an educational process, right? So if you think of it from a marketer's perspective, like what constitutes, me identifying this as what we would call a marketing qualified lead, right? How can I turn that into what I call maybe a sales accepted lead or something like that? You need to make sure that you're working on all of these fronts at very different points of the cycle. But to the other point, though, as you guys are making is, I truly believe you need to work on velocity, right? You need to look and be very critical and understanding, okay, what is the fastest way for me to add value to this company, right? Like lead from that perspective, but then also pay attention and be very cognizant of how does this individual test software in that example, right? How do they procure it? How do they buy it? How have they done it in the past? These are simple questions that you should ask and just be transparent, right? From call one, you could say especially if it's new, you don't have any customers, you don't have any trial clients, be like, how would you envision trialing this, or how would you envision implementing this, right? And walk through that, and you'll start to identify patterns with the more people that you talk to.
Yeah, I love that. Carl, did you want to click on that?
Maybe just a quick build on that is also the culture that you build in your company, right? Like building a corporate culture is not something that you do when you can afford it and once you've raised Series C or something like that, but something that really makes all the difference in the beginning, right? Like in a world where everyone needs to wear many hats, you want your early stage first sales team to be ready to identify issues, right? Like everyone should actually feel like they are the owner of even a part of that world, right? Like they might be the owner of the mid-market sales funnel, or they might be the owner of industry X that we're selling to, or the US West Coast if you're organized geographically, right? But in that environment, it's your job not just to, as Hans said, sell whatever is being put in front of you to whoever is in front of you right now, but also take a look at how can we sell better, who could we much better sell to, and how can we bring it back to the marketing team to give us better materials, to give us a better pipeline of leads? How can we bring it back to the product team and make sure you're really an entrepreneur within the startup? Because if you don't solve it tomorrow, you all might just not have as good as a time as you could have as a startup, and you're putting yourself and everyone around you at risk.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. We're going to take a quick little break and catch our breath. That was a very quick and rich half hour. When we come back, the word that keeps coming up is structure and pipeline. So maybe we'll talk about that a little bit, how to do a deeper dive and to have that healthy pipeline and perspective on how we're driving revenue when we come back.
All right.
All right, we're back with this hot topic of go-to-market as well as how to scale your company. First half hour, guys, we covered a lot of ground. Before we get into what I led up to before the break, pipeline, what does it look like to have that healthy revenue stream? I have to ask you personally, you both are so experienced and have great insight in terms of this space, but why do you love it? Carl, I'm going to start with you. What is it about the startup world, your experience, what made you pivot to this consulting that you're doing so well with all your experience? What's it all for? Why do you love it?
I think it's all about.
Did I catch you off guard with that one?
No, I'm on board with the question, and I'm on board with this world that I've entered here. I think it's a phenomenal way to scale your impact to the topic of the show, and hopefully gonna inspire a couple more people to actually jump into places where they can build, whether that is within an enterprise or whether that is in the startup world. I think that's really worth seeking out. There's so much change going on all around us at any given time. So you want to build that toolkit for yourself.
Your face lit up change. So you like cracking the code. And startups, there's a code. Like just because you succeeded in one venture doesn't necessarily mean you're going to succeed in the next. And you're constantly cracking the code. What is it that you love about life in terms of figuring things out? What is it about connecting the dots? I'm going deep on this one, so I like this stuff. I'm going to ask. I'm coming to you, Hans.
I'm going to answer.
Yeah. I think it's the opportunity to learn from others. Learn from others while pretending to, share some pearls of wisdom with them. That's how I have learned more than anything, by sort of teaching, figuring it out on the go, but also listening and learning how, in a new context that I'm inevitably entering, how does it apply here, and what things don't apply yet. Like every time you work with a new partner, every time you work with a new client, every time you learn how things work in a new country, it's rewarding to know that there's some things that there's a playbook for, and you can bring that and shorten people's learning curve. And then you, like, in the back of your mind, you add that to the toolkit.
Yeah, there's something very fulfilling in terms of putting the puzzle together in life, whether it's business, personal relationships, whatever it is. There is this sense of gratification in finding the connectivity that works.
Yeah,
I love 100%. It. You had something, Hans.
Yeah, no, if I'm going to answer that question, I guess more or less that, I studied entrepreneurship and sports management in business school, undergraduate business school. I met some individuals there that, mind you, growing up here, I knew guys that were in, early stage tech, venture, whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. I would have tried to go into finance if I didn't truly believe, like, where I'm from, that tech was obviously the pinnacle of business at that point. And only from you just look at the money that's flowing around, right? Like valuations of organizations, like what I saw individuals who came to this country and created generational wealth from being at the right place, right time type of thing, right? Even right individual was just insane to me. And then I truly believe that, things that are worthwhile are definitely difficult. And being somebody who has the opportunity to go do very difficult things while bringing joy and value to my end customer, whatever that may be, your end partner, that's an amazing experience to go through. There's definitely been times where I've thought, okay, hey, is this something that I want to continue doing, right? Like, it hasn't been an easy, peachy road. Mm-hmm. It's definitely been some battered times. But at the end of it, it's absolutely made... personally, it's made me who I am.
Yeah, it gives you both ends of the sword, right? Go ahead, Brian. I see you got something.
I just want to say also that for some of us, curiosity is like hunger, right? Like there's just something in us biologically that makes us curious. And I can tell Carl and both Carl and Hans and you, Brian, I mean, the reason you're doing this show, like you lean in and ask questions because you're just curious, like it's almost a biological need.
Yeah,
I think that drives a lot of us.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of truth to that. I want to connect the dots because the unknown makes me nervous. And that's what I was saying a minute ago, where it's the both ends of the sword. Like on one end, there's this, like, I got to figure this out. Like there's this agitation, like this needs to be solved. And that then kind of translate into, well, there's an opportunity to create. And then when you do create and connect the dots, it's like, that's the cycle I want to be in. I want to experience. I believe, so I asked the question, why do you love what you do? But the deeper question is, why are, I think, you passionate about what you do? Because with passion, you have pain, right? You'll do something despite the pain because it needs to be solved. And then when it is, it's that balance of life.
Yeah, no, I think there's a couple ways to answer that question. At least for me, I was asked this question actually at one of my second jobs by an SE. SE is like a sales engineer individual. We were in an incubator within an organization, like growing this up. And he asked me straight up, why are you doing what you're doing, right? And what he was cutting down to was what's like the actual reason.
Yeah.
For me, it's an emotional response when I think about it. For me, it's my dad, my grandfather, like things of that nature. Well, I will not let those guys down. Like the individual that I mentioned to you, who was a professor of mine, mentors of mine, I will not let those guys down, right? Yeah. My teammates that I had playing sports, it's the same exact, I guess, energy or mentality, at least for me. That's how I feel.
Yeah. How can I impact the world with this? That was such great insight. I don't know who said that. That's incredible.
Yeah, somebody's super smart.
I've been waiting for those.
Yeah, I was waiting for the toilet flush. I haven't heard that one yet.
I don't have that
There
one.
you go, Brian.
I'm going to carry my mic out to the toilet.
I'll be right back. We're going to go to break. Yeah. But Carl, so you're doing a lot of scouting. You're working with VCs in order to find the best of the best. Does this perspective of passion of like, I'm not going to let people down matter when you're looking at, because whether you're interviewing for a job or you're interviewing to get funding, does this side of the entrepreneur matter? Are they passionate? Because what I'm hearing you're saying, Hans, and what you were saying a minute ago, Carl, is like you need to find out where that energy and drive ends, because startup is going to test you. Yeah,
absolutely. I think it's the passion in combination with a sense of, there's got to be a pragmatic solution out there, and I just got to find it. It's not because I've built an incredible, real estate AI powered search engine, fictitious example here, that I will also be the best qualified to also invent the best sales process in the world, or the best, outreach to SMB process in the world. That is already there. So if I have the passion for my product, and if I believe I owe it to the world to get it into as many hands as possible, that's a healthy perspective to go then figure out the best tried and tested ways and playbooks to talk about it, whether that be a tool or whether that be a team member that I can bring in, or whether that be someone I can partner with, right? You then want to take the shortest path to the solution that will help tomorrow. And I think when we see that, when we see a founder having the combined high energy but also pragmatic approach, then I think that's worth something.
Yeah, being realistic, right? But I think it's equally as important, right? You have to be, as I said earlier, you have to be intrinsically motivated to an extent. It can be a mixture of both, but yeah, you have to be serious about what you're doing for sure.
Yeah, and it goes to Carl, what you were saying, or I'm blanking, I'm having a blank moment, but we were talking about constantly pivoting at different points of the company's growth. And if all you're thinking is great product push versus what's the problem understand, you're going to hit those plateaus very hard. And so you need to have both, right? You need to have belief in the product clearly, but not at the expense that you're thinking constantly about what does the market need now. And that's both. Am I confusing anybody? But no, I'm hearing that the priority is the pain. Like, does this solve something?
Yeah.
And what's the next step in bringing that to market?
Correct. And as you scale, you got to be ready to essentially wear different pairs of or types of shoes, right? Like there's a different sort of corner of the toolkit that you now need to unlock and learn how to navigate with that org that you're empowering as a founder. So, I highly recommend every founder sell their own product first by themselves and get that, immediate feedback from people that have never heard of the product, whether they would use it and how they would use it. And that makes for a really well-attuned, frictionless product. And then you got to wear a new pair of shoes and pivot into teaching others on your team how to sell. And then once you got that nailed, you got to teach others that aren't even within your company how to sell, like for example, resellers. And every time it's a whole different motion, and every time you're reaching a broader audience which may or may not need your product for the exact same reasons and understand your product for the exact same reasons. So that's why you need different parts of the toolkit again to explain it differently and bring that feedback back into the org.
I love that you use the analogy of shoes. Usually I get different hats and then they look at my bald head and I can sense when they're talking. Okay, or maybe that's just my life. Okay.
Maybe needing to pair.
Are we going to get to see your feet next, Brian?
Hey, last time I was here, they gave you a hat, right?
I did, yeah. That's right. You remembered that. Yeah.
It's having kids and having to buy new pairs of shoes literally every half a year as they grow.
That's
and as
so
they
true.
then they're playing a different sport, and then they're doing
That's a better analogy. That makes more sense. Thank you. And speaking of kids, my daughter says hi, Hans. Skylar says hi. Yeah,
She was cool, man.
yeah, she remembers you. Mike, we can see Hans
She's
again.
a cool girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, 9-year-old. When's Hans coming back? He was nice. Yeah,
Oh, that's sweet.
yeah.
Hey, there we go.
Yeah. So before we went to the break, about 20 minutes ago, we were talking about. We got about 20 minutes left. I don't do math. 10 minutes ago, we talked about the pipeline. Let's talk about the structure of a healthy pipeline. Our audience hears this. I hear it from the beginner's mind. What does that look like in the beginning and then moving forward to keep it healthy?
So, okay, I would just start to forecast conversations in the sense of where are they within like quote unquote cycle, right? And you can work your way backwards, right? Think about it in terms of this, I'm going to implement this tech into this company, right? How many days, what's the stages, what's the path, as I call the path to business, that you would take to getting there, right? Start to identify where they are, right? There's like foundational ways that you can think about this in terms of disco, discoveries, demos, scoping, POCs, whatever it may be, right? But try to make it as simple as possible. What I would 110% tell any early stage operator or anything like that is just be realistic. Be realistic. Look at it from a industry's perspective of how long does it usually take to do these types of commercial conversations with these types of tools, right? What's the value of that, right?
So you really got to do your research.
Yeah, but then again, it's like you should understand, like if and I guess kind of goes back to that operational YC non-YC model, right? Like for me, especially right now, I think there's a lot of value in early or actually later stage operators that understand translatable business value towards whatever they're trying to achieve versus somebody who's, new to the space, new to the nuances of the space or anything like that.
That's a great point. Yeah.
So again, back to the original question is like, what does pipeline look like? Like that just depends on the organization. I've been at companies where, it's a math game, right? Where you're playing sales versus actually doing sales. And then I've been at companies where it's, the way I've usually operated is be lean, right? Be realistic with what you're actually doing. Yeah, you probably need to, backfill or whatever it may be, but at least be honest in your representation of that, right? Like there's no reason at all to moonshot or anything like that because again, you die by the sword, right? And that's the way that you die by the sword 110%. Yeah. And especially as you start to get more people involved in the organization, that's what everyone's going to look at. That's all anyone cares about.
Yeah. Carl?
Yeah, for sure. I think what you're saying, sales cycles can look very different based on your product, but also who you're targeting, right? Your product might be simultaneously good for a very small client and a mid-sized client and an enterprise level client. And if you don't have that properly organized in your sales planning, you might end up having salespeople that simultaneously have very large and very small clients, and they're saying the same thing to both types of clients, and they're wondering why some of those conversations get stuck when they didn't expect it. Because
interesting.
Fundamentally, the sales person is an ambassador for your product, but the customer that they're talking to, that person that they're talking to, is not their company. They are also an ambassador inside of their own organization.
Exactly.
Right? Mm-hmm. If you're selling to a solo founder, all right, that's simultaneously the same person. That's great if you have that figured out, and if you have a clean book of business, right, where all of your clients are solo founders and you have that immediacy. But the moment somebody is in a more than one person organization, they might have to convince others, and your ability to equip them to do so makes all the difference in the sale. And that's why forecasting, like Hans said, is so incredibly important. Forecasting is not your ability to take a ruler and put it on a graph in a spreadsheet and say, oh, we should, net out at 105% at the end of the quarter. Your ability to forecast is accurately assessing yourself and how well have you been able to tell the folks in your client's organization via the proxy of that one person that you're talking to, all the things that they need to hear before they're gonna sign that contract or whip out that credit card or do whatever it needs to take to go to the next stage in your sales cycle. And I think that's something that comes with practice as a salesperson to be able to more accurately predict your own success. And it is something that as a founder you can phenomenally help by grounding people in what the job is and making their books of business really clean and clear.
Yeah.
So what's coming to mind as I'm listening to this great insight is oftentimes people don't get in front of the right people. I may be just kind of grabbing something small here, but yeah, you may be talking to kind of an intermediary. How do you really push the ball down the field, talking to the right person and closing that deal so things aren't kind of like getting stuck?
Yeah, I would say later stage stuff, it's easier. It's based off of like persona or where they are within the org, based off of your value prop and like use case, all that kind of stuff. Earlier stage stuff, I tend to just go by the basis of, can I turn this person into like a champion? And my definition of a champion is someone who sells on my behalf when I'm not there in the room. Right? There's a difference between a coach who kind of coaches you through it and somebody who really doesn't have that vested interest. Try to identify, okay, just real quickly off the bat, like, does this person find value in what I'm doing? Like, do they think what I'm doing is like interesting or cool? Right? Lead your prospecting with that type of engagement, meaning like, don't come out and saying like, oh, take a meeting or that kind of stuff. The amount of automated emails I get for sponsoring events or taking calls is ridiculous. Yeah. And again, you can quickly determine really fast who is actually putting effort into it from a social standpoint and who isn't, right? So back towards what I think good pipeline looks like or what avenues you can take to generate pipeline. There's a lot of avenues you can take, but again, I think it's really, really important to identify, okay, does this person think what I'm doing is interesting? And can I lead with that? And I would do that in person too, like especially with early stage stuff. I think right now a good way for you to differentiate yourself. I say this to people coming out of MBA schools, anything like that. They're trying to get jobs and it's an extremely difficult market. Do the old school things, right? Do the old school things of getting in front of people, coming with a thesis or some type of perspective, right? And trying to extrapolate as much value as you can doing something like that.
I love that shift that you just suggested. It's because I can't tell you how many times I've been looked through. Like, can you solve? Are you the person to solve my problem? Are you the person to fund this? Are you the person? It's like they're looking for the golden egg without respecting the person. Yeah. I mean, there's often times where I will, if I'm wearing my angel badge at an event, just take it off because they're just talking to that.
100%.
Yeah. And so, but what you're saying in this old school mentality is you're finding value in that person one way or another. They may not be the purchaser, but they could be the ambassador. Yeah. And I love that. I just wanted to point that out for all those people who so often network. Who you're talking to can be an ambassador, even though there may not be the stakeholder.
Amen. Yes. Treat people the way you wish to be treated.
I love that. That's why you're here.
They also may be a connector, Brian, right? Yeah. You don't know who they know. And so if you don't talk to them, they might not introduce you to the person you were hoping to get introduced to.
That's what I love.
So yeah, I don't mean to take your thunder. Like there's I talked about it before. There's this path to business exercise. It is so fun to do, especially later stage organizations where you can identify, okay, how did we get this like big contract, right? How do we get there, right?
Love it.
This is what I always do with early stage founders. And I say, hey, start to patternize your business. What do I mean by that? That's I guess, quantifiable, non-quantifiable type of exercise where you want to identify, what did I specifically do? What did I say? And what led me to even get there, right? And you can see these paths that companies take. It's crazy. It's crazy. Some of these things that you would never expect actually happen because they were in the right place, right time. They came with perspective. And a lot of stuff like that happens. I worked for an organization, Andreessen back, $100 million ARR business. How did they get their initial check and funding? These two gentlemen, mind you, not from here, they snuck into a Stanford event, said they were part of the event, met an investor, boom, that was their first angel check. Like, these are the things that happen out here, right?
Yeah.
So
I love it.
Yeah, and to what Brian over there was saying earlier as well, is curiosity, right? Like people aren't, the people you meet in sales or at networking or anywhere are not a transaction, right? They are somebody that ideally you can manage to be curious about and find some way to have a human connection with. And then if you're clear on, okay, how can I add value to them? How can my product maybe, or my experience or my connections add value to them? Good things will come from that. And I think back to the organizational culture that you can create to foster that, right? You can put people under a ton of pressure, and then they're going to be extremely defensive about the work that they do. And, they might not even see that other way that we're just talking about. I have the chance to work with some of the clients in a fractional capacity and be very close to what their sales teams are doing. Two of the sales teams in one of my clients that are based in Eastern Europe, right, like to the point of, a lot of these things are universal. This exact same challenge would happen if your sales team is in LATAM or if it's in the US or wherever it is. But it's very easy for your sales team to come back to you and say, but we're doing all we can and we're super busy. And now you want us to do another thing and, also be curious about people. Yeah. Like how is that going to work? And if you make it very clear that, hey, this is really your main job is to solve someone's business need, then the sales thing will automatically work better. And then you introduce one more tool, which is account planning. And account planning is basically almost like your first assessment session in a new gym that you're joining, right? Like where the instructor sits down with you and says, okay, and let's pretend you've already signed your soul away and gotten a super good deal that you didn't expect to have when you walked in that day, and suddenly it needed to happen fast. But great salespeople can learn a lot from, but also a lot of things not to do. But anyway, you're doing this planning session. They're like, what is your actual fitness goal? What do you want to be ready for, right? Like you won't lose half your weight in 2 months, but let's set a realistic goal. You want to look good at the beach in the summer, whatever is it going to be. Mm-hmm. Where do you want to go? Where are you now? And what are the steps we can take to get you there? Literally coming up with a fitness plan for you based on now state and desired future state. The same exact thing is what you do with your account planning. And maybe even to make one more sort of close one more loop here is you can then use that to assess who are the people in that client organization that I'm talking to that can help unlock that can help open these doors. Is it this person, this junior, whatever marketing manager I'm in front of now? Do I have to bet everything and put all my energy to make this person, try and do something that they can't even do? Or do we work together and partner up to get to the head of marketing or to the head of, I don't know, product who can build a better checkout funnel so that they can sell faster, whatever it's going to take. You build that into the account plan.
Yeah, there's a red thread here, and I want to pull it a little bit. Last week, we had Alicia on, and she's an investor in over 90 companies, has a huge portfolio, and she talked a lot about someone's capacity to respect money. And I thought it was very interesting in terms of being, fundable. And when I'm seeing a correlation here, and if I can point it out, and maybe we can stress test it a little bit, is people's correlation, or the correlation to respecting people directly correlates to respecting money. Mm-hmm. And if you are respecting people and you respect money, you're going to have these mechanisms in place where you do these audits, where you do these fitness check-ins that you're referring to. Am I just imagining this, or do you think there is this red thread that can be kind of stress test and give us an indicator of who may be a good leader moving forward?
Yeah, I think so. It's pretty, at least for me, I think you can suss that stuff out pretty quickly. Later stage stuff, it's easy to see. You've got tons of tools out there to see what revolving doors, right? There's a lot of again, outsiders' perspective of what's going on in the company is not realistic of what is actually going on. You don't know until you're actually in there, right? And also, I would say take everything with a grain of salt. Again, like just because, the individual you're working with, whatever it may be, right? Just because they founded this company, got all this money, doesn't necessarily mean that like they're the right person to take it on. Early in my career, I had the amazing opportunity to work for a public company. It was a pioneer in AI and search technology. They were actually 17 years old when I joined them. Old SaaS company, right? Founder was still the CEO. We knew that, there was going to be a change. There was multiple changes of CEO that I got to experience. Were the best things that ever happened in that company, right? It made my career, totally translated the whole thing. But what I'm getting to is that like when it comes to, sales, when it comes to how you treat people, how you respect money, like there's a lot of early stage people in venture, when they get that check, they already think that they've won, right? Like that's not it at all, right? You need to utilize and you got to pay that money back. So be respectful of where you're putting and allocating those funds. I think that it's intriguing to hear more investors talk about this because the days, of a couple of years ago aren't around anymore, right? And I think that that's a great thing. I love that. I think that, again, it's what's actually forecastable, what's real business value. Let's work towards building towards something like that, right? And let's put the people in place. I think that you got to be very conscious of the culture that you're instilling from day one. And everyone knows that, well, not everyone knows, but I truly believe like as a founder, if you're a CEO of a company, if something is going bad within your organization, you need to be realistic and understand you probably had something to do with that, right? And you need to ask yourself these questions and just be honest with yourself. But again, put yourself around good people and be honest about what you guys are working towards and align on that.
There's a lot to be said there about a leader's ability to be vulnerable and transparent about where they may not have the skills and to be open and honest. But that's a topic for another day.
Yeah.
As we start to kind of wind down, I definitely want to check in with both of you. Number one, I definitely want our audience to be able to connect with you. So we'll kick that around. And then I'm really curious about what's next for you. So Carl, we'll start with you. Like, how can people connect with you, and what's next for you?
I think best way to connect is via LinkedIn. Carl Hinrichsen at LinkedIn. Just I think there's only one.
Well,
in San Francisco
I'll have you
minimum.
tagged.
There we
I'll
go.
have you tagged. So yeah, I'll have you tagged.
Link in the show notes.
Yeah.
And then really excited about this phase of technology of us actually heading into applied AI and seeing all of the different ways that real businesses solve real problems with it. And I think we're getting close to that wave of new business models are being possible that just weren't possible in the old world. So I'm going to be leaning in a ton into that, both to see how it can help, solve more challenges better for my existing clients, but also create new opportunities for me to keep on learning and keep on investing into that flywheel.
And let me wave your flag for a little bit here. If you're a listener starting a business and going through certain inflection points or stages, reach out to Carl, have that conversation about the business model, because it may be changing as we've been talking about today. At different stages, it's going to have different looks, the sales approach, the organization, again, reach out. We're doing this show so that you have access to people and resources to help you scale your business. So this is a great example of that. So Carl, definitely thank you.
For sure. And if you want to sort of keep one tagline, is I think I can say I create global players, meaning companies that are internationally and globally successful by the time that we've sort of gone through all of those stages. And that means helping more companies, set up their business in this beautiful country as well, or find their market here, but also find their market internationally if they are already here. And it is not a time where like thinking globally seems, particularly in fashion every day, but definitely super, super motivated to be surrounded by folks who do believe in that and to contribute in some way.
Well, I have my bat phone set to you when I'm working with these companies internationally. So definitely thank you for being here.
I like that.
Yeah, you like
international player. I like my cousins call themselves that, but they don't work in tech.
Yeah, I know. I love that too. All right, so
do you work in sports?
One of them does, but we'll stop there.
Hans, same question to you. How can people connect with you, and what's next?
Easy way to connect with me is LinkedIn, right? Hans Sandhu. Email hanspreet@theagentic.ai if you want to know my full God-given name. But what's next for me is going to continue doing what we're doing. We're about to open source our model in the next week or so. Pretty excited about that. To that too, I would say that what we're going to continue working on and what I'm just ecstatic about doing is continuing to identify early stage operators that have translatable business value associated to a use case and giving them a platform that's extremely easy to get started with to go create an actual digital worker. So if you have a hypothesis, if you have a thesis, if you want to run a POC, right, within an early stage, later stage organization that's maybe a line of business or even non line of business automation type of use case, or again, hypothesizing towards a digital worker within your space, please come find us. If you qualify for the program, you get access to doing that, and also too within the phases of these programs, give you access to investors too.
So I have to ask before we wrap up, what does someone who comes to you could best utilize what you're doing? What do they look? Is it early stage?
So I'm working with early stage operators that are actually literally working within the industry right now. We're creating demonstrable MVPs. With those demonstrable MVPs, you can go, create other customers or POCs with that, or you can go get third-party investors. We actually just had one client who went through both phases where they created something that's already like in production. I can't, give you too much information of where it's in production, but some individuals that are very big in pharmaceuticals, and that individual just got a check for funding as well. So just like full circle in terms of our thesis of what we've been seeing.
Interesting.
And full in terms of timeline to get something created to do this, took less than 3 months, took less than $100K in actual working capital. So yeah, some cool stuff going on.
I'm just going to toot our own horn here for a second. Brian, Silicon Valley Impact. Hans is an incredibly intelligent, well-spoken, experienced individual. He's been here now for his third time.
Ayo.
And what I just heard Hans say is, please reach out to me if you've got a use for what I'm building.
Yeah.
And so anybody listening, he's not only inviting people, he's not saying it's okay, he's soliciting people to contact him. And I just want to say that's one of the things that I've found to be very valuable here at Silicon Valley Impact is that as a resource.
Yeah.
Just want to point
Brian.
that out.
Cheers, man.
Love it. All right, that's our show. Thanks, guys, for being here. You're incredible. Brian, you're a superpower. Thank you for being here, buddy. We'll see you all next week. Take care. Stay safe.